Hey Phil, this is Cameron.
Hey, what's up, Cam?
Man, I gotta talk to you about something. Have you been watching the news?
Dude, what is going on? Pocket politics with Phil and Cam. Why? Why are we doing this?
I think it's gonna matter.
The only thing they want to talk about is guns and abortion.
My own views, I want to see the Republicans get away from the social issues.
I'm not saying that Republicans are idiots.
You hear something like that, it's powerful.
As an American, I was disgusted.
You could make the argument that you're probably more in the middle as well.
I think that's just a story that somebody's telling you.
Again, well, with the facts, this is true. Everybody knows
What
it.
facts?
So-
What facts? Who does this hurt more, Republicans or Democrats?
Boy, I've been thinking about that.
Welcome back to Pocket Politics. Cam, how are you doing this week?
Doing well, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So we've got an exciting episode today. We got a chance to sit down and interview Maggie Ballard. She is the city councilwoman for the 6th district in Wichita, Kansas. So stay tuned throughout the whole episode and we will play that for you later. But first, we are going to talk about the Trump news this week. Always updates. This week we got quite a bit more, but we still do not have an indictment. We will also talk a little bit about Lindsey Graham getting in a little hot water in the Senate, and then the TikTok hearings and panel that was put together this week. We will discuss that and all the news around that stuff, as well as talking about some things going on in the House, right? We had a bill get passed in the House. We will see how far that goes. But before we get started, Cam, do you have anything?
Yeah, I do actually. I just wanted to kind of tie up something, or I should say update something that we've been talking about the last couple of episodes. That's Mitch McConnell. Kind of a quick health update here. It sounds as if he has been released from the rehab center that he was in, and he is now back home. I don't have any word yet as to when he's going to return to work. In the Senate, all I hear is that he is very anxious to get back there. In the meantime, Senator John Thune from South Dakota has been kind of covering down for him, John Thune being the Republican whip in the Senate. So, again, we'll keep you updated as we hear more, but hopefully we see Senator McConnell back out there on the Senate floor soon. Phil, do you got anything on Mitch McConnell?
I hope that he gets fully recovered. I would say hopeful that he's back out on the Senate floor. Probably just depends on who you're talking to. But yeah, hopefully the guy recovers fully. But I'm sure he's in good care. But on to the Trump news this week. So where do we start? He had his first big political rally this week. So that was on Saturday in Waco, Texas. There was a little bit of criticism coming there about it being the anniversary of the Branch Davidian massacre. But I don't think that's a big deal. I read some other stuff that said really it's the perfect place in Texas because it's kind of centralized and it's, a certain distance from the Dallas-Fort Worth metro area and Houston and Austin and San Antonio as well. So it's just because of its central location, that was a perfect place. And reports are, that it was kind of crazy. What do you have on that?
Well, I mean, I wasn't at the rally, but from what I hear, you just said it was crazy, and I hear something, pretty similar. I guess it was pretty dark and ominous. Trump was talking about, destruction and everything if he's indicted. But also, apparently last night he revealed who is, or what he feels is the greatest threat to the nation. And so, Phil, he feels the greatest threat to the nation right now, not Russia, not China, not a host of other things, Iran or whatever. Apparently he said last night in his rally that Mitch McConnell, of all people, is the greatest threat to the nation. Not exactly sure where he gets that from, considering Mitch McConnell is a member of his own party. But nevertheless, yeah, he came out with that last night in his rally. Yeah, I mean, he's back out on the trail. Again, I think kind of a typical Trump rally. I'm sure there'll be more to come. I don't know where the next one's going to be at, but feel anything more on this rally he had last night?
No, I think we're finally at the stage where he is officially, transitioned from airing out the country's grievances to airing out his own grievances. And so if he's gonna have a chance, I don't think that just complaining about his circumstances and, Moscow Mitch or whatever it is he's gonna call him these days, I just don't think that's gonna work for him. The same way he kind of capitalized on airing grievances amongst, of the American people in 2016, right? This is not, complaining about being indicted and Mitch McConnell it does not speak to the voters the same way as your job got moved overseas, right? Is that a good strategy moving forward, Cam?
Well, I mean, he feels it is, and it rallies up his base. The thing is, though, is that when he's attacking, well, I'll just say it, when he's attacking Mitch McConnell, he's attacking his own party. And while that may sound good, as I just mentioned, with his base and that 30% or whatever of the Republicans that are with him no matter what he's got to worry about is independents and soft Republicans and those kind of voters. And I don't think attacking a guy like Mitch McConnell repeatedly does anything to try and corral those voters. And that's what he's going to need to win that general election. But he seems fixated on, like I said, going after that or complaining about his own things. And like I said, I just don't think that's doing too much for him right now.
Yeah. So in other news, we the looming indictment that we thought we had turns out was kind of a letdown for the first week. It looked like we were going to get news. There's a lot of speculation, but we haven't seen much. But basically, now that we're moving into the second week after, the Trump announced he was going to be indicted, despite his lawyers saying there's no official correspondence, stuff is heating back up in not the case that he was to be indicted for, but the Jack Smith, right, grand jury impaneled in Washington, D.C. investigation into his conduct around January 6th, as well as the classified documents case. All those things are kind of being handled in Jack Smith's purview with the grand jury. But a supervising judge, Beryl Howell, basically came out and might be signaling a lot of doom for a lot of the Trump supporters who were possibly involved. And so she basically came down and ruled that basically because there are crimes committed, that the crime fraud privilege that I think that's what it's called. It's where basically lawyers' communication with their clients is kept confidential. However, if there is a known crime, it has to be released, right? It can be subpoenaed. And so Trump's communications with his lawyer, Adam Corcoran, are going to go to the grand jury and to Jack Smith. As well as it looks like we're going to get testimony from Mark Meadows, who had previously tried to claim executive privilege. Mike Pence was using a strategy as the fact that he was the leader of the Senate as the vice president, and therefore he was in the House or in Congress, and what he was doing was part of official business, so it couldn't be subpoenaed. That did not work. Beryl Howell ruled that is not how that works, and so he will possibly be talking to the grand jury and to Jack Smith as well. So not too much good news for Trump when we're talking about his legal woes, and it actually looks like Jack Smith's case may be picking up quite a bit of steam, right? We talked about that lawyer Corcoran. I said Adam. I think it's either Evan or Adam. I don't remember, but he was heavily involved with the correspondence back and forth about the documents that were being kept at Mar-a-Lago. And so this could be a really bad sign for the former president.
I mean, I keep hearing stuff about this each week. Yet another week goes by. Nothing's happened yet. He's still not indicted. We'll see what next week brings. I'm hearing whisperings that next week he may be indicted. But right now, I'm not holding it to any timeline. These things just have to play out.
Okay. Now, one thing that it did do was it gave plenty of time for Jim Jordan and other people in the House to put a lot of criticism onto Alvin Bragg. I think he had kind of basically said that he was not going to respond or didn't care that, Representative Jordan had reached out and basically said to give them details of the ongoing case. And he, in a way, he's kind of right, wouldn't you say? I mean, he doesn't work for that branch, right? It's not a part of that. It's kind of inappropriate for sitting members of the House or the Senate to be, potentially getting involved with an active investigation. But it got a lot of talking points, right? Like he got a lot of time on the news talking about this and trying to make the case that, Bragg is corrupt or whatever. What do you think about that?
Again, I mean, I know it's been in the news a lot this week. I haven't paid a whole lot of attention to it, honestly, because it seems like everybody's just going round and round. 100% depends on what side of the political aisle you sit on as to how you feel. The majority on the right feel like Alvin Bragg is on a witch hunt. The majority on the left feel he's after Trump, or not really, I mean, doing his job, I should say. I honestly haven't been paying that close of attention. And it just, again, we go on and on and on. I'm waiting to see some action happening. I'm waiting to see something go on, whether he's indicted, not indicted, whatever. To me, it almost just seems like a lot of noise right now. I'm waiting for the big finish, if you will.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think I am definitely waiting for a big finish. I hope that we finally get some traction on this. And with that being said, let's move on. What else do we got?
All right, so we got Lindsey Graham. He was admonished this past week for raising funds for Herschel Walker on federal property. Specifically, what this came about was a November interview on Fox News that he did where he was, again, stumping for Herschel Walker. And this interview happened to be it was either in a federal building or out in front of a federal building. But regardless, he was on federal property. And congressmen aren't allowed to raise money in federal buildings or on federal property at all. So once this came out, then the Senate Ethics Committee got a hold of this and took a look and investigated it. And so they released a letter on Thursday talking about it. And so basically, here's what ended up happening. So Graham is the 13th member of Congress to be admonished since 2002. And really, all this really says is that they found that he was in violation of an inadvertent, technical, or minimal type thing after an official review. A public admonishment doesn't affect a senator's seating or punish them in any way. More or less, it was a slap on the wrist. Lindsey Graham made a mistake when he was doing an interview, and because of that, it was looked at. The Senate said, "Hey, you were in the wrong. Don't do it again. This isn't going to end your career." More or less, that's all it said. It made several headlines, and when I first read it, I was kind of thinking, maybe this would be a bigger deal than it was. It sounds like it was kind of a whole lot of nothing here. And I don't even think Lindsey Graham pushed back at all. I think he just said, "Yeah, I made a mistake, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry for this." But yeah, Phil, would you agree this is kind of just a slap on the wrist and not a whole lot really out of this?
Yeah, I do. I'm not 100% sure if the level of consequence is appropriate with this or not. That's kind of an internal struggle because I really don't know what the levels of consequence there are for sitting senators. Could they have done much more? That I don't know. I think the biggest takeaway is that this is kind of like a Hatch Act violation. So, and it may actually be a Hatch Act violation. And that's something that, we deal with in the government where we have to separate ourselves from our political beliefs, because we work for the government. I saw it showed like 5 different times that he had kind of actively campaigned. And the whole caveat was that he's totally allowed to do that. You just can't do that in the rotunda, right? Because I think he was in the Capitol rotunda talking to a news camera. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like it requires much worse to me. It seems kind of like an administrative error that he committed, and it's not that big of a deal. Because if he didn't say it there, he would have just gone on TV outside government property and said it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, The news headlines earlier in the week made this out to be kind of this big story, and when I read into it, I was like, it doesn't sound like a whole lot. And again, Senator Graham doesn't appear to be pushing back at this at all either. It looks like he's admitted, hey, I screwed up, all right, and he's facing whatever they're bringing at him, which in this case was this, being admonished. So, like I said, I don't think it was that big of a deal. At the end of the day, hey, you know what? Good on the Senate for investigating, though. Good on the Senate Ethics Committee for at least taking a look at it. And so, with that being said, I think we move on to probably the biggest story of the week, and that is TikTok that has been all over the news. Phil, what do you got on TikTok?
Yeah, so there's a lot of discussion about a ban on TikTok. The CEO, Mr. Chu, kind of went in front of a panel in Congress and was asked questions for what I think it was like 4+ hours about his platform. And keep in mind, he's not the actual CEO of the whole company. He's just kind of the CEO of the American version of TikTok. He took a lot of hard criticism and he didn't really seem to answer to it all that well. He didn't portray a lot of confidence. And I'll tell you, Cam, I watched about 2.5 hours of this thing because I had some time the other night and I was kind of curious to see how it went. And it was a little bit disappointing for somebody that kind of should already know that they were in hot water. This is not a new thing. TikTok is banned from all government employees' phones. At least they're professional phones, at least, not their personal ones. And so he had to know there was trouble coming, right?
You would think so. And Phil, you mentioned, that, the other day, 4.5, 5 hours, whatever it was when he was testifying, it didn't go well. According to Representative Kathy McMorris Rogers, TikTok cannot be trusted and has repeatedly lied. And I think her sentiments were echoed by almost every other congressmen and women that sat and talked on that panel the other day, or sat and did the interviews the other day. This one seems to have some real bipartisan, coming together, real bipartisan support, at least, opposition to the app. And it's not just in the House. We've got senators as well that are speaking out against this. In particular, Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, has been pretty outspoken in his views on TikTok. And we've got a clip of him here talking. Phil, why don't we go ahead and play that clip?
We're now up to 22 senators, 11 Democrats, 11 Republicans. We've had strong interest from the House. I think they wanted to get through their hearing. And clearly, while I appreciated Mr. Chu's testimony, he just couldn't answer the basic question. At the end of the day, TikTok is owned by a Chinese company, ByteDance, and by Chinese law, that company has to be willing to turn over data to the Communist Party, or, and one of my bigger fears, we got 150 million Americans on TikTok, average of about 90 minutes a day, and how that channel could be used for propaganda purposes or mis or disinformation advocated by the Communist Party. I think the White House is very in favor of this bill. We give the Secretary of Commerce the tools to ban, to force a sale, other tools, and end of the day, one of the things that may lead to a ban is the Chinese Communist Party has said they felt like the algorithm, the source code that resides in Beijing is so important that they'd rather see a ban than give that source code up to be placed in a third country, which again, I think speaks volumes about the potential threat that this application poses.
All right, so there you had it. There was Senator Mark Warner, Democrat of Virginia, with his thoughts on TikTok. And again, that was on CBS earlier today. Senator Warner's not the only one. I've heard several senators out there feel pretty strongly against TikTok, as we said, many representatives. Like I said, this seems to be one of the few things that is gathering bipartisan cooperation right now in Congress. But at the same time, we also see that TikTok is pretty darn popular in this country. And as Congress talks about wanting to ban this app, there's more than 150 million users just here in the United States alone. That is just mind-boggling how many people are using this. Phil, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would. So and they said that 150 million people weren't just people that had accounts. It's 150 million people that use TikTok for about 90 minutes a day on average. Back to you mentioned Representative McMorris, and she had done some pretty harsh criticisms. She accused TikTok of promoting suicide and self-harm, as well as eating disorders, harm to children. But on a certain level, some of this reminds me, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was the 90s when they were basically bringing everybody in front of Congress to talk about how they thought they were harming kids and creating a dangerous environment for children and stuff. And, it kind of reminded me when I watched Pearl Jam get drug in for the Jeremy music video. Cam, do you remember that?
I do. And I remember even going back into the 80s when it was, stuff on other music, Ozzy Osbourne and all kinds of heavy metal music was bad for youth, they said. So there was all kinds of stuff in the 80s on that as well.
Ironically, there are things that are actually hurting kids. We don't really, we can have ideas with TikTok, but there's certainly, I don't even think it's been around long enough for empirical research. But, this is, I personally think that banning TikTok would be very bad for the country. And I'll tell you, there's a couple different reasons why I do this, right? Is because I think it is a signal that lobbyists from other companies, Meta, Google, even Microsoft at some levels can do this and push a competitor out of the environment, right? On top of that, I think that because of the nature of TikTok, you're basically canceling the social media that only applies to a certain demographic of people. And we look at that, and that's probably people largely under the age of 40, right? And so I think that by singling TikTok out, we're not necessarily taking the right approach. Now, I know Senator Warner, he's got his legislation that basically turns any kind of actions that need to be done with TikTok over to the Commerce Department. But I think at some point, because we had all these same problems with multiple different social media companies, right? Just a couple years ago, you had this, you had Mark Zuckerberg and you had Jack Dorsey, the former Twitter owner, and one other guy, I can't remember who it was, in front of Congress testifying about what they're doing to promote, a safe online environment. And I feel like this is the moment where instead of having these panels, I feel like we need the House and the Senate, probably both of them, to get off their ass and write some fucking legislation on this. We need to solve privacy issues, right? Yes, we know TikTok has done, very questionable things, especially when it comes to military and government employees and stuff. But these other companies are doing it too. And I get it, these other companies are probably not turning over information to the Chinese government. But at the same time, they're still using it to advertise to us, to get into aspects of our life that we don't specifically approve to let them into, because the predefined settings when you start using one of these apps is set up in your disadvantage, right? It's set up to track your location and and to figure out where pictures are being taken and where you're shopping and all those things. We need Congress to write legislation for all of social media, right? Not just TikTok, but everybody, because it's gotten out of control, and frankly, there's going to be a big problem in however long if we don't fix it.
So I'm not going to argue with you on the thought of Congress fixing social media in general. I'm not, because I think you touched on a lot of problems that we have and continue to see with social media in this country. You mentioned Facebook. There's been problems there. Let's not forget they had the Cambridge Analytica data scandal from a couple 3 years back. There's been ongoing other issues. My issue, though, with TikTok is the fact that it is owned by the Chinese, this company ByteDance. And, as Senator Mark Warner said, by Chinese law, the company must turn over information to the Chinese Communist Party if asked. And so that makes me nervous. And I'll be honest with you, I I am with the congressmen and women that are against this thing, and it looks like it's people from both sides of the aisle. I'm with them on this, and so yeah, I'm like I said, social media in general has its problems, but TikTok makes me especially nervous. And I hear that even the president has shown that has said that he is interested in seeing what Congress comes up with this, because I think he's behind possibly some tougher sanctions, or tougher, not sanctions, but tougher teeth into the what's the words I'm looking for? More restrictions, I guess, is what I'm thinking of on TikTok, on the TikTok app. So I'm with the congressmen and women on this one, Phil.
I mean, essentially I am too, right? Because I will say that Mark Warner's, proposed bill is not just a TikTok ban, right? It's turning it over to the Commerce Secretary and allowing them to get involved the way they would with American companies, right? Normally this is a thing that they do, but the reason, they're not heavily involved is because it is not an American company. And so I'm willing for that. But I just think as a whole, TikTok is not the only social media platform that needs a lot of work. And one of the easiest ways we can do this is following kind of the model that is being used in Europe, right? A lot of people may not understand this, but in Europe and in Canada and in several other countries around the world, Facebook and Instagram and Twitter operate very, very differently than they do here, because it's against the laws of those countries, because those countries have actually been able to get together and write legislation that tells internet companies what they can and can't do.
Anything else on this TikTok one, Phil?
No, I think that's about all that I have about it. Yeah, I think we got it covered.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to some other news here coming out of Congress, and that's the House passed a bill here this past week, what they call the Parents' Rights Bill. And this one narrowly passed in the House, 213 to 208. And so you had all Democrats voting against the bill, all present Democrats, I should say. You did actually have some Republicans joining Democrats in their opposition to this, and that was Representatives Andy Biggs, Matt Rosendale, Matt Gaetz, Ken Buck, and Mike Lawler. So they joined the Democrats on this. They had different reasons for opposing it. We can talk about that in a minute here. This one seems symbolic in that it's not going to get through the Senate, but it could definitely give momentum to Republicans, especially as in 2024, as they look to keep control of the House and certainly overtake the Senate. And I say that because let's not forget Republicans ran hard on school issues. Let's not forget Glenn Youngkin in Virginia, right? This is one of the things, or the issues that they think put him over the top here in Virginia. So again, it seems kind of symbolic, not going to go anywhere in the Senate. I've heard both Senate Republicans and Chuck Schumer, the majority leader in the Senate, have both said they're not interested in pursuing this over there. So Phil, what do you got on this one?
Yeah, so I thought initially when I saw that 5 House Republicans had kind of gone along with the Democrats, I can tell you that I was a little bit shocked when I saw the names. But one of the things I noticed was that, each person kind of had a different reason for the most part, right? Lawler, a freshman, had basically said that there were parts of this bill that just went too far. Now, I didn't get any kind of detail on what parts he thought were going too far, but there's other things in here too, right? And unfortunately, saying it was, potentially putting vulnerable children more at risk, is one thing that was mentioned as well. And even, if we do this now, the liberals will just figure out how to use it against us in the long run or something. So there were a whole bunch of different reasons. I don't understand. I think the best comment was the comment that, this is not an area where the federal government needs to be involved. That it is not, and I think that was Matt Gaetz who basically said it's not in the Constitution that we're supposed to be doing this and be involved in this. And I thought that was kind of a really interesting point, because it is kind of true, if you go around and think about it.
Well, let's talk about the bill here for a second. So it's got 5 core principles, and they are: parents have the right to know what their children are being taught, to be heard. In other words, the parents to be heard. They have the right to see the school budget and the spending, and then to protect their children's privacy and to keep their children safe. So that's what these core principles are supposed to be in this bill. Now, according to Representative Julie Letlow, she's a Republican from Louisiana. These are her words, and I quote, "It is not an attempt to have Congress dictate their schools' curriculum or determine the books in the library," she explained. "Instead, this bill aims to bring more transparency and accountability to education, allowing parents to be informed, and when they have questions and concerns, to lawfully bring to their local school board," end quote. Now, this was countered by some Democrats, in particular Representative Pete Aguilar, a Democrat from California, had the following to say. They, Republicans, want to bring, partisan rhetoric and fighting into the classroom. We don't think that's right. We think they continue to put politics over parents, and that's the focus of this bill and this piece of legislation, end quote. Now, my thoughts here, I am all about parents having the right to know what their kids are learning. That's my 2 cents in this bill. I don't necessarily think this is a bad bill from the outside looking in. My 2 cents on it, like I said, I think it definitely brings momentum to Republicans, but it's not going to go anywhere. It's a symbolic, basically just a symbolic bill they put through. Like I said, biggest thing they'll get is probably some momentum, at least from Republicans. Now, we'll see how independents take this, because that's kind of the big thing, the independents and the soft Republicans, because that's what the Republicans will need to keep control of the House and to try and overtake the Senate in 2024.
I just do, I heard another quote about it, but I don't remember who it was, but it was basically about that, the Republicans have, kind of given in to the latest populist fever, and I think that is a little bit right. The ability to be heard, guess what? They already have, parents already have the ability to be heard. Anybody can go show up to a school board meeting, right? As long as you're not disobeying the law, anybody can go to these meetings and kind of speak out. I don't really understand what's different, right? I have a kid in high school. I've been able, just without any effort whatsoever, to be privy to everything that she's being taught in school. Maybe in some places that's harder to do, or, if you don't talk to your kids when they come home from school, you're not going to learn about stuff like that. I don't see the point, and I kind of agree with some of the talk out there that, hey, again, constitutionally, this is not what, the House and the Senate don't provide oversight to, education.
Well, again, you and I are probably on different sides of this issue. But as I mentioned earlier,
well, that's in the Constitution, Cam. That's in the Constitution. It's not a two sides thing.
No, I'm talking about sides of this bill. I'm not talking about the Constitution. I'm talking about sides of this bill. I said you and I are probably on different sides of this bill. I don't see it as a bad thing. And as I mentioned, whether people agree with them or not, or like this bill or not, this is something that Republicans ran on, and it was successful for them. They took the House on a lot of these very issues. And so they are, again, if nothing else, symbolically speaking to their voters when they do this. And it doesn't hurt them at all to pass this. Like I said, it's not going to go anywhere in the Senate, but I think this was a win for the Republicans in the House this week.
All right. Well, with that being said, I think it is time to go into our interview with City Councilwoman Maggie Ballard. So here we go.
All right.
Today we are talking with Maggie Ballard. She is a Wichita, Kansas native, a small business owner, and a city councilwoman.
Yes.
She has gained national attention for creating Paxton's Blessing Box, the very first of more than 100 mutual aid distribution points across the nation. She was even mentioned in the Washington Post. And every day, this gives a chance for generous folks to use the boxes to donate critically needed items, including non-perishables, to vulnerable residents free of cost and available 24/7. As the city council for the 6th district, she has paved the way for homegrown citizens to strive in local politics and make a difference. Maggie, welcome to the podcast. And if you would, just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your job is as a city council member.
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks for asking me to join. Much like you mentioned, I'm born and raised in Wichita. Actually a classmate of yours, so that's super fun. And yeah, I owned two of my own businesses after college. I bought my first business at 22. I bought a little neighborhood bar that I had for about 12 years called Maggie Scotch and Soda. And then during that time, I bought my second business, which was a little coffee shop that happened to be my first job, called the Riverside Perk. So I had both of those, and I had the coffee shop for about 5 years. Um, and then I had another job in between there at a community mental health center in Wichita. And I was their development coordinator. I did some fundraising for them and community outreach. And then I decided that I should maybe run for office. A couple people had asked me if I would ever be interested, but what they were asking me about was more on the state level. And, I'm a single mom, and my son he's about to be 13, and I didn't want to miss out on any of his stuff being in Topeka 3 or 4 months out of the year. So when the opportunity came around for city council, they say it's a full-time job. I mean, it's definitely a full-time job. We joke around, but the only thing part-time about it is the pay. It definitely is a lot of work, but it's definitely, for me, work worth doing. We make all kinds of decisions on roads, parks. I focus on like the tree canopy, accessible water. We are getting we have two legacy projects going on right now. We have a new sewer treatment plant and a new water treatment plant. So both of them are together are about $1 billion projects. They're huge. One of them's way down south, and the other one is up by the zoo, kind of in North Wichita. So we have a lot of really cool things going on, and I'm really happy to be a part of it. I represent the center of the city, the core of the city, and then all the way to north city limits. So I represent about 66,000 people.
Hey, Maggie, this is Cameron. I want to first of all say thank you so much for taking the time to come on here with us, because we definitely do appreciate it. I've got a couple of questions here for you. My first question is how long is your term on the city council there?
So it's a 4-year term, and we can run for 2 terms.
Okay. My next question for you is tell us what it's like running in a local election. I mean, we see on TV and we hear so much about these big statewide races and certainly the national races and such. But I'm curious, and I'm sure our listeners are too, just what is it like running in these local elections?
If I'm being 100% honest, which I am, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done. I mean, I know a lot of people in Wichita, having, my businesses there, my parents owned a business there, born and raised there, my son goes to school there. It's so hard. I wasn't supposed to win my race. There were 7 of us running, and then I ran against a really well-funded incumbent. She worked at the university. She's had some incredible jobs, and she outspent me 4-1. So she raised about $200,000, and I raised about 45. And I won the primary. So the top 2 advanced to the primary. I won the primary by 60 votes, and then I won the general by 11 points. So what's interesting about my race is, I turned 40 in September, and with the local races, I just feel like so many young people, I'll say that we're young, don't pay attention to local politics. They're so focused on, making sure that they vote for the president, and they really pay attention to that. But I feel like with COVID, at least in Wichita, or if we learned anything, it was, how powerful, local government is, whether it was the city or the county, and the decisions that they can make that could affect them like overnight. And so I think some younger people started paying attention, and it did make a difference in the election, because I had classmates of mine that had never voted before in the local election, but they started paying attention because I was starting to run. I was starting to ask questions. I was starting to knock doors. I have a big presence on social media, just between the bar and, our nonprofit and things like that. So I had a lot of people already following, and they were kind of starting to pay attention. but I had to work so hard, and there were 40-year-olds that had never voted in the local election. So a lot of my new turnout was the younger generation that was finally kind of starting to pay attention. I always joke, I'm like, we can't lean on our parents to like keep carrying the torch for everything. Like, our kids are in school, we are making really important decisions, and the younger generation needs to pay attention.
Yeah, and you kind of touched on it. You talked about your social media presence.
Mm-hmm.
What was your big avenue, or I should say, what were the big ways you were getting your message out? Was it mainly social media? Did you do a lot of door knocking? Did you have debates there? Or kind of a combination of all of them?
Yeah, definitely. I did do a little bit on social media, of course, because it's free. But I did a couple mailers, but they're super expensive. And I was trying to, get the most bang for my buck, but I knocked doors every single day. I mean, every single day. And a lot of times I didn't even get people to answer the door. But when I was like leaving a brochure at their door and like, leaving a note that was like, hey, Philip, sorry I missed you, please give me a call if you have any questions, just like making things personal, and taking the time to go knock people's doors, I feel like really went the distance with people. So I also did a lot of like little meet and greets at different coffee shops, different little restaurants, bars, like anywhere that I felt like I could go talk to somebody, get in front of people. That's exactly what I did. That's basically what I did. I mean, I got stopped a million times at the grocery store, just anywhere that I was. I just took the time to talk to people if they were willing to talk.
By getting involved in local politics, did you find that some friends maybe turned against you, or did you find you suddenly had enemies now running in a local race like that?
Honestly, I don't really think so. It sounds so cliche. I don't really think of myself as like a politician. I mean, I feel like more of like a public servant. I mean, I've done community service work. My parents owned a store in the 90s in downtown Wichita, right next to a park where a large population of our homeless community is housed or was hanging out. And so I've been around, the homeless population for a really long time, but it just, I don't know. I don't really think so. I think I just am really relatable. I'm a mom. I'm a nonprofit owner. I'm an activist. I'm a business owner. I'm a neighbor. I'm a daughter. I'm just all of these things, but I don't look at myself. We're supposed to be nonpartisan, and a lot of the issues that we talk about on the city level, I feel like should be nonpartisan. We should all want nice roads. We should all want nice parks. We should all want, nice pools and amenities for our city. And I mean, I guess we fight or argue sometimes about how to spend the money, but no, I haven't really seen it, at least on my face.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Phil, what do you got?
Yeah, so I was just high in kind of your small business experience. While most people probably are not familiar, I am with the perk and Maggie's Scotch and Soda. But how do you think that experience kind of helps you on a day-to-day basis when you're working on the council?
Sure. So definitely just the open communication. I met so many different walks of life, in the bar and actually in the coffee shop too. I met judges and attorneys and musicians and, every type of walk of life that you can possibly think of. I'm a good listener, which, on the council, 99% of the emails and calls that I get are complaints. We appreciate the 1% that, just calls and tells you, when you get it right. That's nice for the people that take the time to call and tell you that. Not that we need a pat on the back, but sometimes it's nice to hear when we get it right in someone's eyes. But I guess just being a really good listener and being a bartender was a really good quality that I attained over during that time. So, yeah, I would definitely say, and I was learning things that I didn't even know that I was learning, and, have been a huge asset to my job now. So yeah, those are some of the things that I would definitely say were perks.
Okay, you already kind of touched on it a little bit. Can you kind of go back over why these local politics, especially on the city and county level, are so important, and also how can people get more involved with that?
Sure. It was really interesting during my campaign was, still kind of in the middle of COVID. So, trying to run a campaign during COVID, knocking on doors when a lot of people weren't answering the doors, or even going to, meet and greets or things like that, was really, really hard. But we also had, some other things that were on the ballot, like the school board, and in Wichita, there was like a lot of controversy over the masks and all of that stuff during school. So, and then the abortion stuff was on the next, the county race the following year. So we've really had like some, we'll say, controversial things, other additional things that have been on the ballot that have brought out other people as well, maybe people that hadn't voted in the past. So I think maybe people are just starting to pay attention, thankfully, to local politics. Maybe they have kids in school, so they're paying attention to school board now, or, there's some type of situation that they're joined a board and have started paying attention to, the parks. Maybe they're joined park board or, something like that, but the Botanica board. So they're just getting a little bit more involved and engaged. And it's been a huge blessing because we definitely need younger people to stay involved.
That sounds great. And then I think to wrap it up, where do you said you can only do 2 terms, so where do you go from here?
Maybe mayor. I don't know. I feel like I still have, a lot to learn. I didn't have any political experience besides joining some boards, and just my community experience joining some boards in the past. So I guess after I just started my second year, so I assume that I will run a second term for council. But I could run for mayor, and you can run 2 terms for that as well. But I guess if you ask me today, that would be I think a goal of mine, unless something happens between now and then and I change my mind. But I think that's kind of the direction that I'm headed.
Hey, I did have one more here. What advice would you give someone considering running for local office?
I would just say, do it. Do it. I don't know that there's ever going to be like a perfect time. It is a lot of work. It's, I don't punch a clock or anything like that, but it is a lot of nights and weekends. So the schedule is pretty flexible. It's whatever you want it and make it to be. But I would just encourage anybody to do it or try it, even if you didn't win, or it's an incredible experience. I have met some of the most incredible people, even just knocking doors. I would just say do it. It's scary. It's very scary. I remember talking to my parents about it, and they were just like, oh, okay, they're my biggest cheerleaders, but it is really scary. But we need people to do it, and we need people to feel confident and, want to make changes and, just be the best representatives for our districts and for our city to retain and attract people to stay in Wichita and raise their families.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Well, that is all of the questions we have for you, though. Thank you again very much for your time. We greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing good stuff for you on social media in the future, Maggie. So keep it up.
Thank you guys so much. You guys have a great evening.
All right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks again to City Councilwoman Maggie Ballard from Wichita, Kansas. Cam, I think that was a great interview.
Oh, I do too. No, that was great. Thank you so much to her for coming on. Definitely appreciate it.
Yeah, and it is a really good opportunity because, she mentioned it as well that, a lot of people don't typically engage in local politics and not, I had talked about going to that town hall a couple of weeks ago, but this is hyper local, right? Like this is right down to almost the lowest level. So good chance to learn a little bit about that. And if you like it, we are getting more and more interviews. We're going to have one, I think, next month. I believe, and we're getting stuff going on. So please take the opportunity, go to pocketpolitics.co. You can go engage with all of our social medias. We do not have a TikTok, however. I am sorry, but maybe we'll get there soon. But from pocketpolitics.co, you can engage with us on Instagram, on Facebook. You can email us a whole lot of things, and then we like that interaction because it kind of lets us know how we're doing or what people are interested in that are listening. With that being said, Cam, is it time for parting shots?
It definitely is. Phil, you want me to go first?
Go for it.
All right. Well, for my parting shot this week, let's go to Newport News, Virginia. Specifically, this past week, we had 2 inmates escape from a Newport News jail annex. And these 2 inmates used some kind of metal object, I guess they found, and a toothbrush to basically bust through, or I should say kind of jab a hole into a brick wall in their jail cell. Which, I guess the jail is saying there was some kind of structural fault that they found. I mean, it must have been quite a fault, because I'm actually looking at a picture of this thing, and there's, like, no kidding, a hole that these guys just busted through with their a toothbrush and a metal object. So anyway, these gentlemen break through. These 2 gentlemen were a 37-year-old John Garza and a 43-year-old Arlie Nemo. So both of these 2 individuals bust through. They get out, and, what do you do after you bust out of jail? Well, hey, I guess you're hungry, because you go to the local IHOP. And while they're sitting in the IHOP, somebody finds them pretty suspicious and calls the police, who come to the restaurant and apprehend them without an incident. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't plan on going to jail anytime soon, nor am I doing anything that's going to land me in jail. But if I was in jail and I was to break out after I had dug through some hole into some brick wall, I don't know about you, but I don't think I'm going to hang around the local area, and especially not go into a restaurant and dine while I just sit there with law enforcement buzzing about. But that's what these 2 individuals did, and they were apprehended, as I said. I guess the stupid shall be punished. The only thing I'll say, Phil, is while they were sitting there and the cops came in and arrested them, I don't know if they had a chance to finish their waffles and their pancakes at IHOP. So with that being said, yeah, crazy story, but I've got the NBC News article about this whole story linked up on our Facebook page. Go onto our Facebook page and check it out there and tell us what you think. So, Phil, with that being said, over to you.
Yeah, so my parting shot is a little bit of on the scientific front, not the the Shawshank Redemption that ends at Waffle House or IHOP, sorry. But we learned earlier this week that sometime over the weekend, we're recording this at Sunday, but sometime over the weekend, a asteroid dubbed the City Killer is going to pass harmlessly between the moon and Earth. And I guess we will find out how harmless that passing was if we are recording another episode next week. We shall see. So they said, it's passing in between both of them, should be at a pretty safe margin away from both the moon and the Earth. But it's, the size of a large aircraft and traveling at extremely high speed. So I just thought that was interesting. We have these probably closer than we would like calls all the time. This one isn't actually, they're saying it's not putting us in any actual danger, but this kind of stuff happens all the time, and it does beg some interesting questions. But with that being said, that's all I have for this week. Cam, over to you.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening. And again, thank you to our guest this week, Miss Maggie Ballard. We certainly did appreciate that. I think it was a great interview. Thanks for listening so much, ladies and gentlemen. And until next time.
All right. Bye.